Everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in this video, I'm going to share the story of my first helicopter EMS scene flight. It was exciting because it was the first one, and there were definitely some challenges, some things that I didn't know. I'm gonna lay it all out and just tell the story of my first helicopter EMS scene flight. Let's get into it.
That's like autopilot, dude. How do you fly a helicopter? Well, I'm gonna show you.
So as I share this story, I'm not going to share any patient details or any gruesome information. I'm just going to tell the story from my perspective. But one thing I do want to say is, yes, this is a story and it was, my first scene flight. But the other aspect of this is this was someone's worst day ever. And it's an interesting position to be in because for me, it's just like another day at work and it was just me flying a helicopter, which I've done every day for years now. But to someone else, this was an extremely traumatic and terrible situation and a terrible day. So I wanted to lay that out there and just know that I do think about that. But from the aviation and the pilot side of things, I'm going to share this experience from my perspective, wishing the best for the people involved in the situation on the other side of it. So in helicopter EMS, in the US, there's typically two types of flights you can do. If you don't know this already, you can do what are called scene flights, which are like what most people think helicopter air ambulances do, which is like someone gets hurt, there's a big trauma, and then you go and land next to where something happened, you pick up the sick or injured person and you fly them to the hospital. So we definitely do that. The other type of flight we do is what are called interfacility transfers, and this is where we take someone from like typically a smaller hospital up to a different hospital or to a higher level of care facility. And for my operation, we do I would say about 60% interfacilities, 40% scene calls. So it's pretty mixed. Any day you don't necessarily know what you're going to get, but we do more interfacilities than scene calls. And now that I've been in the industry for a little while now, there's pros and cons to both. At the start, did not like interfacilities because it was just like boring. It's like place to place flying. Don't get me wrong, you're still flying a helicopter and it's fantastic, but it is like more boring. Scene calls are cool. They're more exciting. There's more going on. It's just you're landing at an off-airport site. There's typically police officers and firefighters, and that just makes me excited. So those are definitely more cool. Like I said, still prefacing that these are people's worst days, but from the aviation side, it's just a more dynamic and fun type of flight to land at a scene. So the way that I did my training is I went through training, got signed off, and then they put me on. So my schedule now that I've been in it is 7 days on, 7 days off. I do 7 days of day shifts, 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. And then I do 7 days of night shifts, 7 p.m. till 7 a.m. So when I initially got signed off, they put me on for like, I think 3 or 4 weeks of day shifts. So I would just do day shifts because obviously it makes sense that they want you to just be really competent at like the job and have gone and done some flights during the daytime before you add the complexity of the nighttime. So I was on this was my first week, and I was on my first week as a signed off helicopter air ambulance pilot, and I had already done a couple interfacilities, but I was waiting for that scene call to come in. I was waiting for it. So on this specific day, it was a warm, summer-ish day, beautiful day, clear, skies were beautiful, it was pretty calm. The only thing that we had going on throughout this day was there were just like scattered rain showers that were coming through. I briefed this with my crew, and we knew that we were going to be flyable today, so if a call came in, we would do a quick weather check, but we were likely to be flyable. I didn't see any problems besides these rain showers that were coming through. Not thunderstorms, but just rain showers. So that was in the back of my mind, but it was a beautiful, clear day overall. So the day had been just dragging on, and I was just like waiting for the tones to go off, waiting for the phone to ring, and eventually the phone did ring. It was in the afternoon, maybe about 2:30, and the phone rang, and they were like, all right, we have a scene launch. Now at the company I work at, there are two types of things. We can get a standby or we can be an automatic launch. A standby is like the 911 center has called or communicated with our comm center and let us know that, hey, there's something going on. We just are seeing if the helicopter is available, if you guys could even potentially accept this, and you're just being put on standby, so like be ready. Or you could be a launch, and a launch means like, nope, we need the helicopter, like we're ready, yeah, we're good. So this one was a scene launch, so that means like, yeah, they've decided they want the helicopter, and now they're just calling us to see if we can take the flight. So I get the information from the comm center, I get the location of where it is. Now when you get a scene call, at least for where I work, we don't get the patient weight or the status or what happened. We just get location, just purely location. So I looked at the location and it was basically directly south of the base. It was VFR at all airports. It was a good flying day. We did have these scattered rain showers moving through, but it was totally within our company limits and FAA legal weather limits. So I told my crew, yep, we're gonna launch, and we pushed the helicopter outside and started up and took off south. So they told us once we had launched and we were en route that we were responding to a car accident, a head-on collision, and we were going to be flying, I don't know, like a middle-aged adult. So we continued to the scene, and my crew in the back is starting to brief their game plan. They're starting to think about like, all right, hey, I'm going to do this, you're going to do that. This is our steps. So they're starting to talk their medical talk. While I'm aviating, I'm flying, I'm navigating, I'm communicating, I'm doing all this stuff, I'm starting to think about like my scene, like what I'm looking for. I'm going through what I'm gonna do when we get to the scene. So I need to make sure I establish where the winds are. I need to find all the obstacles. I'm looking for power lines. I'm looking for towers. I'm looking for any obstacles. I'm looking for the terrain. Is it sloping? Is it flat? Are we on a flat land? Are we in a valley? Are we near mountains? I'm constantly looking for forced landing options. Where am I going to put it down if I have an engine failure? I'm thinking about how am I going to come into my zone? How am I going to come out of my zone? The landing zone quality. Is it dirt? Is there potential for a brownout? If it's winter, is there potential for a whiteout? It wasn't winter in this case, but these are all the thoughts I'm going through. I go through I use the acronym WOT feel: winds, obstacles, terrain, forced landing, entry path, exit path, and landing zone. So I'm thinking about these things as we're on the way to the scene, and then once we actually get to the scene, I'm actually going through this scan. So eventually we do approach the scene, and I start to see the 911, I start to see the emergency lights, probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles out. I can see it pretty good. And the interesting thing about this landing zone, so the way this one was set up is there was a head-on collision on a road. It was like a back road somewhere, head-on collision. And so just to, I guess, the east of it was this big, large open field in the middle of kind of a neighborhood. So there were a bunch of houses around, but there was a big open field. So they were going to put me in the field, and then actually my crew had to jump in an ambulance and go down to the actual site of where the car accident was. So as I come up to the scene, there are two large, we're kind of in the middle of a valley. There's two large hills on either side. So we come in and I stay really high, and I enter a right orbit because I need to do my scan. And this is my first scene call, so I'm doing everything real slow, real calm, real methodically. So I enter a right orbit, and so I'm going through winds. Okay, winds are coming out of the west. Obstacles. Okay, we've got power lines running along the road. No other big poles, no other big antennas. Okay, we're pretty good on obstacles. Down low, we don't see any large obstacles. Terrain, okay, it's pretty flat here. It's a grassland. Forced landing, okay, I can go right there. Forced landing, forced landing, forced landing. My entry path, well, because the winds are coming from here, I think I can come from this angle. It's going to be like a normal to steep approach angle. Okay, my exit path, well, if the winds are coming out of the west, there's no obstacles right there. I can kind of shoot that gap. Landing zone, okay, it looks pretty good. It's grass. I don't see any fog. This is the thought process that I'm going through as I'm coming into my zone or as I'm doing my orbit. I'm talking these things out loud. I'm like, okay, winds are coming. I say all of the what feel. I say all those things. And then I'm talking with my crew. All right, do you guys agree? Do you see anything? And they're like, no, we're all good. So then I'm in the orbit, and then I go back out. I make my downwind leg, and then I come into the wind. And I kind of kick the helicopter out of trim a little bit because I'm flying on the right seat. So I kind of kick it out of trim so that I can watch myself come down, and I can kind of see out good. I mean, you could come straight on, but then, you've got the large dash. So depending on how your helicopter is, I kicked it out of trim a little bit, and I just slowly walked myself in 200 to 300 feet per minute. And I think there was a lot of people outside recording, so, you know, not that you're thinking about that, but you are conscientious that there's a ton of people recording. I don't know. That's just a factor. But I'm coming in and just a normal approach. Not much of a story there. I just came in and set it down. So we shut down. My crew unloads all of their gear into an ambulance. So where the accident happened, they could not put us like directly right next to it. It was very tight. Like I said, it was on a kind of a winding road in the middle of nowhere, kind of in a valley somewhere. So they set me down in the field, and then my crew loaded up all the gear in the ambulance. The ambulance drove down to the scene. This was another ambulance. They had people there, and I sat there in the helicopter, and I just babysat the helicopter. That's kind of like the thing on scenes, you know? You sit with the helicopter, make sure no one comes up and touches it, and no one's getting too close. You know, you just sit there like an authority figure and just, you wait. There's two options for a scene call for different companies. You can either stay hot and stay running, or you can shut down. It kind of depends, and we talk about it as a crew. We have the authority depending on where we are. Like if you're on a highway, I don't know, you can decide whatever your company says you can shut down or not shut down. It depends on what the situation is. But for this one, it was like they put me down in a big field, and we kind of knew that there was going to be some extended extrication. They told us that over the radio, that there's going to be some extended extrication, so it was going to be a while. So I was like, all right, we'll shut down. And they wanted to shut down to my med crew, so we all agreed on that. So they shut down. So I just kind of sat there and waited there. You know, eventually maybe like 40 minutes later, it was like a long time to get this person out. They got the person out, and they were injured. They loaded the patient up, and we got in the helicopter. Now, so a factor that I want to talk about here is this helicopter. It was new to me. You know, I had maybe at this point 15 to 20 hours in it, like a substantial amount of time in it. But this would be like the most heavy flight I had taken in it. Obviously, because you have me, and when I was going through training, it was like me and my instructor pilot, like the training captain. So I didn't have that much experience with this helicopter at max gross weight. And in this configuration with me, the paramedic, and the nurse, and the patient, and the amount of fuel we had, we were pretty close to max gross weight. And the other thing, this was like a warm day, and it was starting to rain, so it was like high humidity. So in flight school, one of the main things you're taught is the 4 H's, or however you think about it, but high, hot, heavy, humid. If you're high up, if you're heavy, if it's really humid, or high, hot, heavy, humid. Yeah, any of those four, all of those are going to negatively impact performance, and the helicopter is going to have to work harder to produce lift. So in this configuration, I was basically all those. We were not high, you know, it was not a high LZ, but we were heavy, very hot. It was summer, and it was humid because it was raining. It was like sprinkling. So I was concerned about performance. Now, if you are at max gross weight or below that, you should have plenty of performance. That's how they establish max gross weight. So I knew I'd have the performance, but I was just kind of concerned. The other thing, if you remember, is this was kind of a valley. So, you know, I would have to climb out of my spot, and this field, there was like trees around it. So I had to climb kind of vertically and then push forward and gain airspeed, and then climb out of the valley. So I don't know, it was just a thought process. But in the moment, you know, you don't really think about that. And by the time you get to this point in your career, you have flown thousands of hours, you have landed thousands of times, you have done thousands of takeoffs, and you have already flown this helicopter for a decent amount of time. So I wasn't that concerned. It was just a thought that I had. So we climbed up. I pulled like 85% power, and it was fine. I didn't even pull my max takeoff power. So I took off, and we turned en route. I made my communications with our dispatch, our communication center, and we started en route for the closest trauma center. Luckily we were not super far. It wasn't like a long flight, but on my way there, I had the thought, like the realization, like, wow, I am actually flying a sick person to a trauma center and making a difference in their life. Now, it's like, I don't know, it feels like a bad thought, because it's like, it's not all about me. It's like someone is having a really, 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 really bad day, but for me, and I hate saying this because I don't want to sound selfish, but it was like a really cool moment. And it felt cool to help people. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it's bad to like helping people. So it felt cool to help this person. But that was just like a brief passing thought. I landed on top of the hospital. Now during training, you get practice. You practice landing on top of the local trauma center that you're going to be going to a lot, or a lot of the community hospitals. At least where I did at least when I went through training, we had a lot of practice, so I knew what it was like to come into this specific hospital on this rooftop helipad. We landed. They unloaded the patient on the rooftop, and I just sat on top of the rooftop, and I crossed my arms and I looked out and I said, wow, this is an extremely, extremely cool day for me. But it's also really weird because someone is having the worst day of their life. So it's always this contradicting thought of, wow, this is really cool. I'm flying a helicopter, and I'm flying a helicopter to help someone, and also that person is having a terrible day, and they're fighting for their life. So that's hard. So we flew back, and that was the end of it. We fueled up the helicopter, did the paperwork, and that was my first scene flight. So overall, like, not a dramatic flight. It just felt dramatic because it was the first time I had done it, and it was exciting and cool. And there was a lot of emotions. I'm not an emotional person, but yeah, you're landing because someone really, really, really needs your help and needs to get to the hospital. So it's a cool thought. It's an interesting thought. But that is the story of my first ever scene flight. Let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think about this? I have to say that I'm extremely blessed by God to be able to do this job. It is a fantastic job. I'm extremely grateful. I think it's cool, and I'm glad I'm using my skills and my knowledge to help make people's lives hopefully better. So I think it's like the best job I could ever possibly imagine. Some people say that, but I truly believe it. It is the best thing I could have ever possibly landed doing. But let me know your thoughts down below. What are your thoughts about this scene flight? What are your thoughts about EMS in general? Have you thought about doing this? Do you have any concerns? I want to know everything. So let me know down in the comments below. Subscribe for all kinds of helicopter content, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.